Every conversation tells a story, and the best ones begin with honesty, courage, and a little curiosity. That's where Elsa Kurt comes in. She's an author, podcaster, and independent media personality, and this is where she brings real life to the table. Authors, thinkers, creators, leaders, everyday folks with extraordinary journeys. We sit down, we dig in, and we talk about what matters, what's messy, what's beautiful, and what just might inspire you to look at the world a little differently. So pour a cup of something good, settle back and join me. This is Elsa Kurt Interviews, where truth has a seat and everyone's welcome.
Well, hey, my friends, we have an interview for you today. We have a big interview for you today. I'm very excited about this one. So this is something that is coming right off the heels of the new White House nutritional guidelines from RFK Jr. And this is the only officially MAHA sanctioned film about the controversial state of the U.S. healthcare system. And it is going public on February 24th. And I am so blessed and grateful to have the director of this documentary, this film, with me. His name is Jeff Hayes, and this is a little bit about him and what we'll be talking about.
Why are Americans sicker than ever after decades of so-called medical advancement? This week, Elsa sits down with filmmaker Jeff Hayes, director of The Real Anthony Fauci, and now MAHA Uncensored, a bold new documentary examining overmedication, chronic disease, regulatory corruption, and the health solutions many say were pushed out of the mainstream. Join Elsa as she delves into this timely conversation.
Well, hello there. Thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm just perfect. Thanks, Elsa.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to have you on today. This is such a huge topic. From the moment RFK Jr. took his position on, I was a huge cheerleader for that because I was very, very excited about the things that he was going to do and the things that he was going to attack. And he wasted no time, which has been amazing. And so this film is so timely and so great. Your central question is simple, but it is unsettling. Why are Americans sicker than ever after decades of medical advancement? And obviously, it's not a small question. So you ready to get into it?
Yeah, this turned out, this is big. This simple question. I had one of our experts say, we're not in the experience of a healthcare system that's failing. We're having the experience of a medical industry that is succeeding. Mm. And that really struck me. When we made sickness profitable, we unleashed something that we never imagined. In 2024, the election year, August 23rd that year, Bobby was running for president. On August 23rd, he had a press conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and withdrew from the race. He gave a brilliant 1-hour speech. I had been asked to fly in the night before. They wanted some friendly faces in the crowd, and watched him. We didn't know that that's what he was going to do. Mm. And then after the meeting, they said, well, come with us. We're all going to a Trump rally. And I'm like, okay. 24 hours earlier, I didn't know I was going to be in Phoenix. And now I'm on the front row of a Trump rally.
Wow.
And Bobby, when President Trump introduced him, the crowd went wild.
Yeah.
It was just, and I'm looking at this going, wow, the audience for my films just multiplied by a factor of 10 with the energy of the MAGA movement. And in that speech, Bobby extemporaneously said, make America healthy again. Mm-hmm. And it was resonant. It caught on. And Bobby filed a trademark on that phrase and on MAHA. Mm-hmm. And so after he was assured of being Secretary of Health and Human Services, I asked Bobby to license me that to make 4 films. And this one of those films, The Truth About Medicine, I knew because of him being as Secretary of HHS, I would have access that normally I wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. So we did over 100 interviews for this. It turned out to be 16 chapters, and it's going to launch on the 24th with the first and second chapter, and then there'll be successive days after that. But I am so proud of this. We really do find cures that have been suppressed. We find mistakes that we made, and we find there's some villains in this story, and there's reasons we're so unhealthy.
Yeah. I'm sure there are quite a lot of villains there, and the motives are, I suppose the motives are, pretty obvious as far as financial gain, power, control, all of those things. And of course, just keeping us sick, which keeps us dependent on those very systems. And, the more that you read and the more that you think about it, the more infuriating it gets. And I want to talk about that, especially as it pertains to our children and our grandchildren. So, but before we even get into that, tell me a little bit about the moment that you realized that this wasn't just a health problem, but potentially a systemic one.
Yeah, what I keep seeing the same story playing out over and over. And like, I'm a capitalist. It's amazing that I supported Bobby. I'm a libertarian. It's just a little L libertarian.
Sure.
And so I look at this and go, how could capitalism be doing this? And this is not capitalism. This is crony capitalism. I don't believe there's any people sitting behind the scenes that are designing this grand plan to make us sick.
Mm-hmm.
We've set the incentives up where it's happening almost automatically. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things we cover in the third chapter is pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs.
Okay.
And I talk to my normally educated friends. They don't even know what they are. These were companies that were set up to negotiate with pharma for prices for drugs on behalf of us and insurance companies. So great, they're going to negotiate better deals. Well, they started negotiating deals where they get rebates or kickbacks. Mm-hmm. So there's drugs that should cost $25 that charge $1,800, right. And the pharmacy benefit manager is the one getting that spread. And so what turned it really bad was then the 5 big insurance companies bought the 5 big PBMs. And now the insurance companies own these, and that's where all the money is going. I thought, wow, this is terrible. Well, it turns out the same thing has happened in farming. Mm-hmm. The same thing has happened in ranching. So we have these row farmers who are growing corn, cotton, soy, wheat, and they're buying their seed. There used to be 2,000 seed sources. Now there's 5. Mm. And so the prices are choking them out. And then once they grow it, this is not corn like, corn on the cob. This is corn to be used for feed, to be ground up and made corn syrup, corn mm-hmm. solids. And so they're selling that to big food for processed food, and that's their only place to sell it. Mm-hmm. So they're in the middle getting squeezed. And then I see the same thing happen to ranchers, where there's only 5 places that a rancher can sell his beef, these 5 big, and they make 63 cents out of the dollar, where the rancher makes 37. So it's this same system being replicated over and over. Meanwhile, you have processed food companies that just want to sell a lot. Mm-hmm. Of course, they were bought by tobacco companies who took their addiction scientists and put them to work. But if you and I started a restaurant, mm-hmm. would we want to have the very best food that we could have, to sell the most, to have people come back? And so it just evolved. Right. And so now we have processed food making us sick. Meanwhile, you have the companies like Bayer buying mm-hmm. the farming companies, buying Monsanto, and I don't think they planned this, but they saw, oh, great, here's this profitable industry that's making people sick, and we happen to make drugs. What a perfect synergy. And this is the system that the moms in this country are raising their kids in. Yeah. And if you show up to a soccer game with oranges instead of Snickers, you're like, oh, great, you're that mom.
You're that one, right.
And so we've got to educate people on what real health looks like, and support moms in making those shifts where it's not just the one granola mom who won't let her kids have the delicious Doritos.
Yeah, yeah, and I love. There's several things that I loved about what you've said, and one of the things, the first thing I want to point out that you said, and I know I'm guilty of this. We get into this habit of using the they term, like they all conspired together to make us sick, and it's a big conspiracy, it's a big plan plotted against us, and and it's an interesting perspective and thought process to realize that like it's a collective, yes, it all ties together, but it wasn't necessary. And I'm not saying that makes it better, but I'm a fan of just simply facts and clarity. So, I do think it is important to point that out. And I'm glad that you did. And then, the other part of that, which is what you just said about the choosing the better options and just being educated. And I know that's been a huge part of, I don't know him, but I'm going to be so nervy to call him Bobby, because I just like it. That, he's about that education factor, like be educated, know what you're eating, know what you're feeding your kids, know what you're putting in your body. And I think that's so critically important, because so many people, especially probably like the older generation, rest on well, I've been eating Twinkies. I don't know. That's the first one that came to mind. I've been eating Twinkies since 19, whatever. And they just don't understand that the food that you were eating then, or the version of that food that you were eating then, is not the same thing that you're eating now. And I think so many more people are definitely getting to understand that better. But the more education that you put out there, the more information you put out there, the better people can make, choices for themselves and their families that are just better.
It's last night, 60 Minutes had Bobby Kennedy on, and like they never did an interview with him. They haven't. He used to be on all the time for a decade. They haven't had him on. And I watched, and they had the former head of the FDA, I think his name is Kessler, on bookending Bobby. And I thought, oh, this is how they're able to get Bobby. Like they can't ignore the Secretary of Health and Human Services doing these. Flipping the pyramid. But we can't have Bobby Kennedy be on because we know he's crazy. And so they put Kessler in there to say, okay, well, Bobby and I disagree about everything, especially vaccines, because we know they're great. But on this, he's right. And so, but it was the first honest and fair reporting done by the mainstream media in years. And so we're making headway. But in that report last night, they were shocked to find out the FDA does not know the number of chemicals that we have in our food. In Europe, they're limited to 400. And it's probably in the range of 10,000. But because of our generally recognized as safe rule that we've had at the FDA, we don't know. They don't report this. And so literally we're putting components in food that are not food that your kids are ingesting into their tiny little systems. And we're seeing things we've never seen before.
Right.
When I was a kid, I never came across any child in my entire youth that didn't speak.
Right.
With the exception of there was a kid who was mute. And that was the word, oh, he's mute because he was deaf. And now all of a sudden, this is something that we didn't have a word for that, for somebody not speaking. Right. We didn't. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It was like that was
a staple.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, there's peanut allergies and obese kids. It's amazing. Things are going wrong, but it's leaving a lot of clues. And the experts that we interviewed and the stories that we tell in this MAHA movie. The whole name is MAHA Uncensored, The Truth About Medicine. And I liked that our marketing people came up with MAHA Uncensored because I was massively censored.
Oh, I bet.
Banned from buying. I used to spend $100,000 a month on Facebook buying ads for my films, and then we couldn't buy an ad.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's like
they literally refused you, right? They declined, right? Yeah.
When I did the real Anthony Fauci movie, an editor in LA sent me a section he'd edited for me to review, and he put it on his private password protected YouTube channel. Called me. I was driving and I got home to look at it, and it was taken down off of his private channel before I could even review it.
Yeah.
It's violating their content policies.
It's so crazy.
This film is quite uncensored, and now we can tell the real story.
And these are, and you're putting these up, so you're offering them for free for, I believe, a limited time. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And they're going up. Are they going up on YouTube as well? And if so, are they minimizing? No. Okay.
No, they're all at mahamovie.com.
Okay.
And that way we can control the quality, and we also don't get taken down, and all of a sudden episode 3 disappears mysteriously. We make them free to watch. It's a wacky business model, but I've been doing this for years, and about 5% of the people who watch it for free decide they want to own it, and it actually we can usually make back the amount that we spend to make the film, or make a profit on putting them out. But we want the widest distribution possible, and people do pay because they pay with their time.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that people know from the very first 5 minutes, oh, this is worth my time. And we got access that you just normally wouldn't have. So I'm really excited for people to see this.
Oh my gosh, you guys have to go to the website. Tell them the name of the website again. It's
mahamovie.com.
Thank you. And you have a personal website, a different one as well too, right? Is it jeffhayes.com? No.
JeffHayesFilms.com.
Thank you. Yeah. I want, we'll put those in the show notes and everything too for everybody, and we'll have it up on the screen. Please go check out both, because your catalog of work is so amazing and so impressive. And I can't wait to pour through like each one. That'll be my to be everybody has a to be read list. I have also the to be watched list. There's so many on there that I'm like, oh, and it's just such a great education that you don't get.
I did a movie about Bobby Kennedy called The Truth About RFK Jr., and that's on Angel Studios, so people that are Angel subscribers can watch. He really is one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating person I've ever met. And I've watched him through this whole thing, and watched him go from being a Hollywood darling who was loved, on the cover of Time magazine is the Kennedy who matters, to being a pariah, and to watch him stoically just take that. He is so committed to turning this around, and I think we have a chance now. We've got a great head of the FDA. We've got a great head of the CDC. We've got Bobby in place, and we've got the full support of President Trump behind him. And now, if we can get the public to, we can grab this moment. I can't stop the Ukraine war. I can't stop the ridiculousness of the Epstein files and wherever that goes, but I can reclaim health for me and the people around me, and I can let people know we've got a chance. So this is a moment.
It absolutely is. And I'm so thrilled, relieved, gratified that it's actually able to get out now, that it's not going to be blocked and censored and, hidden from people. And, what they do with it is say, yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, we know there's going to be platforms that will do their very best to minimize the effect and the reach that it has. But that's why we get to do things like this. And we use all of our resources to get the information out to people. And I admire your perseverance through that, because it is brutal what you've gone through. I've gone through it on a much smaller scale. I had, especially during the COVID years, of course, had just so much stuff blocked and just automatically removed without any discussions. Just, nope, you can't say that. It's gone. Goodbye. And people who don't believe you are like, oh, you're making that up. That never happened. It's like, I can show you the screenshots, people. Like they don't want you to know these things. And it's horrifying. And the level of manipulation and gaslighting that they have done to the entire nation, if not the world, is honestly, it's horrifying, isn't it?
Yeah. When some of these things where science has become a religion, and it requires faith, and it is really astounding. But there are people that just need to know more, that will do the best, that are just doing the best they can, and with amazing, there's a section on peptides, there's a great section on stem cells, and we cover red light therapy and all the longevity things, and I like all this cool stuff. We had one doctor we interviewed. It was a boring interview because he kept coming back to, I want to talk about some of these exciting things like all the new peptides. He goes, well, if you just get enough exercise and sunshine and you're grounding every day and movement and clean food and clean water, your body makes its own peptides. Like, okay, but what about stem cells? And it just kept coming back to exercise, sunshine, grounding, good relationships, clean food, clean water. When I interviewed Ben Greenfield, who's a biohacker and a buddy for years, after we finished the interview, he goes, Jeff, the truth is if we would just get people to exercise, get sunshine, have good relationships, clean water and clean food, we're 80 to 90% of the way there.
Yeah.
And so this stuff doesn't have to be exotic. I love the exotic stuff and I love covering. But, this, I walk 15 to 20,000 steps a day. I live in Utah, so we get covered in snow. I put a treadmill in my house and I used to own one as a clothes rack. But
Same. Yeah.
I now have a rule. I can't watch Netflix unless I'm on my treadmill.
So, I love that. That's brilliant.
And I'm like, I don't feel like that. Ooh, I want to see what's happening with Reacher. So I want to have some goofy show that I want to see what's happening.
Yeah.
And, anybody in the world can do that. So we'll cover all the exotic things and we'll cover all the conspiracies and all that. But meanwhile, exercise, sunshine, putting your feet on the ground, eating food.
It is that simple.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that just like human nature to want to complicate everything, like to make everything so much more difficult than it actually is? And that's like the simplest place to start and maintain of all. Let me ask you a little bit more about the film. So it begins with what you call the dark history of the system. If you're willing, could you share? I don't want to take away from the film at all, but what's one historical turning point that most Americans have never been taught?
Yeah, this is the Flexner Report that occurred early in the 1900s, where you had Rockefeller and Carnegie hired Abraham Flexner to go out and do a survey of all the things, and it was the Wild West. There were all these different schools of medicine: homeopathy, osteopaths, chiropractic, and Western medicine, and because they were making chemicals that became our drugs, they put their money behind our Western medicine model. And homeopathy, their schools didn't get funded. Chiropractic, they got ignored. Osteopathy had to convert to a drug-based profession for them to continue. And they made this shift in the early 1900s that became our traditional Western medicine. And then Rockefeller was so brilliant. He would use his foundation to donate hospitals to Japan, to all over the world. And what a great guy. He's building hospitals that buy drugs from the drug companies that Rockefeller owned. And it was like this exact same model that Bill Gates used by funding the WHO, demanding foreign countries adopt our vaccine program to get our help and our funding. And then, coincidentally, he's a major investor in the vaccine companies for profit that are selling to these from his charitable work.
What a coincidence, right?
Doesn't that just work out great? And so
amazing. Yeah.
We spread this all over the world, but in the reality, we've been doing it for hundreds of years. Male medicine, was give them mercury, bloodletting, and amputation, this heroic medicine that evolved from the male model. Meanwhile, you had these wacky women that were practicing herbalism and had herbs that cured people, and they would pass it on. And then when they started succeeding, we would burn them for being witches. Like literally, you have this male versus female model that continued on and then got codified into our Western medicine system. When I was born, my mom didn't breastfeed me because that was for poor third world countries. We had science-based milk, science. And, back then, the husband was out in the waiting room pacing while a surgeon delivered the baby. Maybe if you were the poorest people in the world, you might have a midwife.
Right.
We medicalized birth.
Yeah.
Where it needs a surgeon.
Right. Yeah, it's just wild. It's just wild, and we got persuaded into it. And it wasn't. They're so smart. They're so smart, and I hate to use the they, but they are. They're so smart in how they did it because it wasn't sudden. It wasn't abrupt. It's such a brilliant, a horribly brilliant gaslighting. I'll go back to gaslighting of the people, and we were persuaded into believing it all. Right.
And that the phrase, "Oh, that's been debunked."
Yeah.
I don't need to think about this anymore. That's been debunked.
Mm.
And so now that these have become billion-dollar industries, that and billion-dollar drugs, individual drugs, then of course they start building an infrastructure to keep that in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll read articles in the New York Times talking about how glyphosate is not bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several articles on seed oils are good for you. And and there was an article saying processed food is really not bad, it's actually good for you. And I'm like, how does a writer write this stuff when they're writing things that I know are not true,
right,
that they know are not true, that then so you have people that if you got your news from only the New York Times and ABC, you would think that Bobby Kennedy was a crazy nutcase,
right,
and that and these are people. New York Times. This is a well-informed person that has no idea the strings that are being pulled, and the impact on their health is astounding. I was in New York at a fundraiser for a very well-known filmmaker, and I was sitting next to the former managing partner of Goldman Sachs.
Mm-hmm.
And he and the guy next on the other side of me were arguing over who had the best concierge doctor. Well, my guy went to Harvard. He was my guy. And then the guy sitting to my right had to go up and take a pain medication. And I said, well, have you ever thought of like ozone for that?
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me like I had said, have you ever thought of getting a witch doctor? These are the wealthiest people in the world with access to everything and completely oblivious to anything that doesn't come from their indoctrinated doctor who believes more than we do in prescriptions.
It's so wild. And, and I love that your film is going to get people to just start thinking, like just think a little bit rational. Like maybe don't even take everything that you're saying or that this film is saying as the gospel, as the absolute truth. At least take it and do your own research then. If you don't want to, you know what I mean? And I think that's such a lacking skill. And that's, of course, a point proven in that story you just told, that like nobody wants to take the time to educate themselves, to learn more, to question what's being said to them. We lost that ability, it feels like. Your film is going to, or does, I should say, addresses the overmedication of children, which is, that is so huge. That is so rampant, isn't it? Tell me a little bit about what you talk about in the film regards to that.
And this is in episode 1, and we go deep into the SSRIs.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always been wary of them, but now what we learned, oh my gosh, we have one psychiatrist who flat out says it. Usually people couch their words and, well, depending on the person in front of me and this, and he's like, there is no human being in the world that should be on an SSRI, period. They don't work and they have horrible side effects. He said, if it was to be prescribed for anything, it should be prescribed to create sexual dysfunction.
Wow.
These are, it's the most reliable effect.
Yeah.
When we talk to these people who were put on them as kids and they're addictive, they try to get off of them and they start having withdrawal, and their healthcare provider will say, well, that's just showing how badly you needed to be on them. They go, oh, I guess I did need them. And instead, they're enduring withdrawal. And some of these, it was incredibly painful. It can take years. One of the people we interviewed owns taper clinics, 16 different clinics that all they do is help people taper off of these drugs.
Wow.
There's one lady, Kim, who her husband was having trouble sleeping. This is 20 plus years ago. And he went to his doctor, said, I can't sleep. The doctor said, I'm going to put you on Zoloft. 6 weeks later, he killed himself. And she took this up, found the research that the FDA knew about this and didn't act on it for years. She sued and won her suit, but she is also responsible for there being a black box warning on these SSRIs that they cause violence and suicidal behaviors sometimes. And she now sits on the FDA committee that approves these drugs as the consumer representative.
Yeah.
This one, if you watch nothing else on this, because I thought, well, there's some people that surely need them that you wouldn't want to see them off of their meds. And I've changed my opinion.
That's always the argument, right? That's always the counter argument is that, well, some people need it. And that's the only thing that will help them. And that's always like the comeback people will always say every single time you argue against the use of them. And just for anybody watching who didn't know, and I'll be honest, guys, I didn't know. I couldn't tell you what SSRI stood for. So let me just tell them quickly. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They're a class of prescription medications most commonly used to treat depression and anxiety orders. Most common are, like you said, Zoloft, Prozac, Lexapro, Celexa, Paxil. They're prescribed for major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety, panic disorder, OCD, PTSD, and even off-label for some other conditions. I just wanted to make sure if anybody didn't know, I wanted to make sure you guys knew what we were talking about here.
Thank you for doing that, because this is the water I swim in.
Yeah, it's all familiar to you, yeah.
It's so familiar, and I forget that, like I said, I was having dinner with some friends of mine that they're very successful, and I go, well, yeah, these PBMs, and they're like, these what? And I'm like, wow, they don't know, and everybody looks as big pharma as the villain. What people don't realize is big insurance is 4 times as big as big pharma. Yeah, there is billions of dollars flowing, through this system. And they are very happy keeping it in place. They're very happy getting kids on drugs that they'll be on the rest of their lives. You've got a built-in customer forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. Oh, I can't say it enough times. It's so horrifying to me, as, my kids are grown. So I look at my grandkids. We have 4 and under, and I look at these sweet, beautiful, happy babies, and the idea of their joy being stolen from them like that is just awful. So, again, for nothing else, like you just said, for nothing else, watch for this and learn from this and just, oh my goodness, just know what's out there and what the alternatives are. I want to
point out that there's lots of good news in this.
Yeah.
And it's like, where when I first started finishing them, and I was sending them over to our marketing people, and one of the people said, wow, this is really depressing. I'm like, ooh, that's not what I'm going for.
Right.
But I love sunlight, and I love the truth, and you'll recognize the truth when you hear it. There is so much that we can do. Changing this food pyramid, that affects what the military buys. The military buys billions of meals. This is big. So now all of a sudden we can change the school lunch programs. And like literally right now, you can't have over 10% saturated fat in a school lunch. That means they have to use seed oils. When they should be using tallow or lard or these that. And so getting these infrastructure changes made where now we can take this and grow it and feeding our kids nutrient dense foods, even if that's only 1 meal a day that they get, that's a nutrient dense, full of everything their bodies need. This is a change we can get made over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because it is easy to interpret this as a scare tactic, as something depressing and defeating, to know that all of this has been in existence and a part of our lives as of right now, up until right now, that this is still part of our lives. But you should be watching this and taking this as hope, and the alternative and education. I mean, just knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. I could say that 1,000 times over. Knowledge is power. And once you know better, you get to do better. So how exciting is that? To me, at least, I think that's such a gift to be given, to just have all of this knowledge compiled for you and given to you to do as you choose with. Watch it, walk away from it, ignore it, heed it, whatever you want to do. But at least you have options now. At least you have the knowledge, which I think is just so wonderful. I'm going to set you free shortly. I'm sorry. I just have so many things I want to ask you and talk to you about because this is so great. Let me just ask you also about, you address diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's, which is pretty bold territory, right? You said something in there about and tell me if I say it wrong, amyloid scandal. I don't know anything about that whatsoever.
Yeah, where the Alzheimer's research that we've been doing has been based on this theory around amyloid plaque. And it turned out to be a faulty study that we have then spent hundreds of, maybe even billions, I don't remember, of dollars going down this trail that was all based on a faulty study. And so grants just kept being given. The NIH kept pouring money into it. And now we have the chance to actually find some solutions, and we show some in the film. And on the topic of cancer, my wife died 2 years and 7 months ago of ovarian cancer. And I know Nobel Prize winners in cancer. I know the resources that I have are off the charts, alternative, and we spent a fortune on alternative treatments. We also did traditional, and I watched, and it's not this deal, where a lot of the alternative people will say, oh, cut, poison, and burn, that's all bad, that's all just money making, it doesn't. And then the traditional people say, oh, this wacky alternative stuff. And we extended her life by a couple of years by doing everything. And I'm against chemo, except when I saw it work when nothing else would work. Sure. And so we've got to be open-minded, looking for solutions everywhere. Right. And the cancer episode, the message of that one is really based on terrain theory. And that is, you want to have a body that clears cancer every day. You don't want a strong terrain. What you said about education, that Dr. Nasha Winters, who wrote a book on this, says an educated patient is a hard-to-kill patient.
I love that.
And you can make your body very unlikely to get cancer. And so there's hope for that. With diabetes, if somebody's a type 2 diabetic, I don't think there's one person with type 2 diabetes that we couldn't have off their medications within 90 days using diet alone. And that's
huge. Yeah.
Led down, and this diabetes, I was at a Christmas party, a breakfast, and I had one of my diabetic, we'll call him a relative, but, not really a relative, but, your uncle. And sure. His nephew comes up to him and said, oh, do you want some orange juice, Pops? And he's like, yeah. And he pours him this giant glass of Sunny D. I said, aren't you a diabetic? And he goes, oh, yeah, thank you. And then took a sip of his Sunny D and pulled his insulin pen out and injected his belly with insulin.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, that would be bad if I didn't take my insulin. I'm like, maybe don't take the Sunny D.
Right. Yeah, right.
Liquid sugar. So
right. Oh,
there's so much hope there, and hope for, obesity. We get into the GLP-1s, and I'll let people go through that and make up their own mind. But we stray into all of these, and there's hope for each one of them.
Yeah, it's no wonder. You said it's a 16-part series. Yes, is that correct?
It's 16 30-minute or so episodes, and so we'll double them up on certain days. Some of them are a little longer, and so they're on their own day, and people can pick and choose. I think if after somebody watches episode 1, they're going to be very interested in seeing the rest of this. I am so proud of this. I originally was just making a 90-minute documentary, and it just kept expanding and expanding, and so I'm really happy to share this with the world.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you are. It's so huge. And you really assembled quite a crew there. Obviously, RFK Jr., Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Peter McCullough, Callie Means, and I'm sure a whole bunch of others, which is just incredible. That's like to me, that sounds like the dream team right there. So that's just incredible to have that group of people giving input and participating in whichever ways that they did. So kudos to you for sure for that.
And Dave Asprey and Robert Malone, and like literally everybody would want to hear from, and many people that are not famous. But we've got senators and politicians and leaders, from every category, and there was so much competition to even make it into one of these 16 parts. If I was to show you the footage, we may film somebody for 2 hours and then use 3 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's based on a lot of very smart people that have done a lot of thought on this.
It sounds like such an incredible labor of love, really. I mean, because the hours and energy and time and everything that you and everyone you worked with had to put into this to be able to put this out for everybody, and then to offer it for free for people is just mind blowing to me, and so incredibly generous, and and really a testament to the importance of it. I think, like, that you're saying, listen, I don't have to make billions of dollars off of this. This is information that you need to have in your life, and I just wow, to me. It's just incredible. If you could, obviously there's going to be critics, there's going to be the naysayers. We know that. I mean, we've been hearing them, all along. Anytime you don't toe the line, what message would you like to give to the critics?
Literally, this stands on its own. I'm willing to have the debate. I'm willing to sit and argue for why I think. But the fact, I did a series on stem cells 6 years ago, and our experts in that talked about how you take these embryonic stem cells that are from umbilical cord stem cells, mesenchymal stem cells, and inject them, and then they take residence in your body and form new tissue. So I'm filming about stem cells for this, and this expert says that they don't take residence. They turn out they're transient, and they're out of your body usually within 90 days. They trigger a healing cascade by being there, and then they leave. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I've been told. And so I checked on Grok, and Grok said, no, they become part of your body. I checked GPT, no, they don't. And it turns out that from the time I filmed then to what I film now, we now know they don't take residence in your body if they're not your body.
Okay.
Like, if you get a kidney from somebody else, you have to take a drug to keep you from rejecting it. Same thing happens with stem cells. But I reported exactly the wrong thing 6 years ago.
Wow.
It's state of the art. So it's like, I'm used to being wrong.
Sure.
And it's like, so what I can say is this is the best that I can gather today, and we'll know more in 5 years.
Right.
But there are things that you take somebody who is a diabetic and you change his diet and he's no longer diabetic in 90 days. You can't argue that. That's like, okay, the science may or may not have caught up, but here's the person not diabetic anymore. So it's certainly our best effort, but that's why I'm willing to discuss this with anybody, but I'm not going to do it in religion that I can't be challenged.
Right.
Because my own experts on the same topic challenge me by just the knowledge growing.
Sure. Yeah. And I love that. To me, that gives more credibility, because you have the humility to be able to say, I'm working with the information that I have right now. Can that information change? And I think that's like, to me, that's should be a matter of course. Well, of course, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, when you know better, you do better. As you learn more, you get to do better and make different choices and all that. So I love that that's just kind of part of the vernacular there, that you're like, listen, we'll talk about it. You give me your perspective on it. And I think that's great, because the tendency, I'm not going to throw any, no name calling, no finger pointing, maybe just a little bit of finger pointing. But there is a faction of people who do not want to have the conversation. They just want to shut it all down. They want their perspective out, and that's it. And there's no room to talk about it. So, that is not the case here. And I love that.
And it's dangerous to talk about it. Not only it's dangerous to allow the conversation to happen. It's like,
dangerous. Oh, yeah. We are in fascinating times, aren't we, Jeff? Fascinating times. Oh my goodness.
I just coming back to Bobby Kennedy says, I'm only responsible for the little piece of real estate inside my own shoes. And like literally, I've heard him say it publicly. We were sitting in my office and I was asking him, about, was he afraid? This is when he's running for president. You've got to consider the risk to you.
Yeah.
And Bobby said he gets up every morning, kneels down and prays, and stands up and says, "Reporting for duty, sir." And then I later interviewed one of his daughters, and she talked about it. That's literally how he starts his day. So sometimes when Bobby will ask me for something or text me about something, I'll text about, reporting for duty, sir. And that's who I want to be. Is I want to every day show up to report for duty.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you sure are. You're doing one heck of a job of it. Thank you. I appreciate it. And people watching it.
I'm excited for you to see it. I think you're really.
I am too. I'm so excited. Yeah. Yeah. Super excited. My husband and I are going to sit down and watch it together. So it'll be great. I'll see if I can get my daughter in to watch it. My son-in-law, I know he'll be one of the first ones watching it. So I just can't wait to share it with everyone. It's so wonderful. One last time, will you tell everybody where to find you and where to find this film and all of your work?
Yeah, and and you don't need to find me. There's nothing exciting there. The mahamovie.com, and I think that I literally, sometimes some films come out better than others, and this one I just marvel at all the things that transpired to create something of real impact, and I think people are going to be really glad to see it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think you're right. I know that you're right. I believe that you're absolutely right on that. Jeff, thank you so much again for joining me today and sharing this wealth of information and hope. And I really do want to end on that you're offering a great deal of hope here for the alternatives and just through educating. And I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elsa. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Thank you all for watching us today. We will see you in the next episode. Take care.
You've got a story worth sharing. Now it's time to tell it well. Whether you're an author, entrepreneur, influencer, or podcast guest, stepping in front of the camera or microphone can feel overwhelming. On the other side of the mic is your practical, encouraging guide to becoming a confident, authentic, and engaging interviewee. Written by media personality and best-selling author Elsa Kurt, this book blends real-world wisdom from hundreds of interviews with a touch of humor, grace, and heart. It's more than a how-to. It's a roadmap to presence, professionalism, and peace in every conversation.